It's a fact of life that data is fragmented. Whether you work in a large organization or a small one, the reality is if you're doing anything with data, you're working across many different data silos, both internally and externally. The problem that this causes is that your insights can also become fragmented. You have data that doesn't tie together nicely, doesn't play well with one another, and your insights suffer as a result. But this doesn't need to be the case. There are multiple approaches that people take in order to solve the problem. The first is that you can use natural keys. A natural key is a identifier that maps to something in the real world and uniquely identifies an entity. In the case of companies, this is often a URL or can be a corporate registration number or a DUNS number. In the case of people, these are things like social security numbers that uniquely identify the individual. The great thing about these is they're easy to implement. The bad thing is you have a very high risk of overmatching if you don't have great data. It's very possible that a company or a piece of data that you've collected about a company will have the wrong URL. It'll use something like a Facebook URL, facebook.com. And then using natural keys, you will then match that to Facebook, creating issues downstream. This is even worse when you have junk email addresses and you start combining many different records about a person that are actually wrong. Another approach to this is to use a composite key. These are also easy to implement. And similar to a natural key, you are just taking information that's already available in the data. Here, you're taking multiple of those keys, so that reduces the number of false positives or overmatches that you do. But in this case, it can be even harder to find matches. And so you're at risk of undermatching. The other problem with this is your sources, once again, must be very high quality. The final approach is to create a unique ID. This is very, very technically complex to build, but once you do that, once you have a mechanism for creating a unique identifier, after you link together different records about the same entity, then that becomes very accurate. It's also durable and scalable over time. The Tamr ID is a mechanism for making this process simple. This is something that is produced by Tamr after linking together all of the different records about an entity. A Tamr ID is an identifier that is truly unique, and so it's a universally unique identifier. And so for each entity, there's only one identifier associated with it. Two, it is a persistent identifier. And so as new records are created and we have more information about this entity, in this case, Goldman Sachs, it's automatically going to be associated with that identifier. So you can continue to use that identifier over time and track changes. And the other is this is produced automatically. And so creating persistent unique identifiers is a very difficult technical challenge. We've done all of that work, and that is presented within Tamr as just a natural part of the process. The first benefit of the Tamr ID is that it enables you to work smarter because you have this unique persistent identifier that is describing a entity. You're able to use that in order to get a complete and single view of each entity. In this case, if we're thinking about customers and we want to review the revenue of our customers, by having that Tamr ID, we're able to see all of the sales that we've done with that customer and actually get an accurate aggregate total of our revenue with that customer. The other main benefit is that you could get a lot more done and be much more efficient when you have Tamr IDs. One, because you have an accurate view of your end customers, people within your organization are going to be spending less time responding to customer complaints because people are serving and interacting with customers using complete, accurate information. If you're on a data team or an analytics team, the dashboards that you're creating are much more likely to be accurate and trustworthy, and therefore saving you time troubleshooting when there are issues. Also, data silos are increasing and only going to increase over time. By having this Tamr ID, which serves as a join key across all of your data silos, data integration becomes much easier. You don't need to think about this trade-off between natural keys, composite keys, or creating a synthetic key. You have what you need and can just join that data together. And then finally, because the Tamr ID is persistent over time, it's easy to understand changes. You could see the lineage of an entity, see what changes over time, and be able to understand what's moving in your business. Bringing Tamr IDs into your organization, please reach out and check us out at tamr.com and join one of the thousands of people who are benefiting.